Okay, welcome to Landmark's podcast, In the Weeds, where we get into the weeds on everything property management. You may already know our other show, Opening Doors, hosted by Troy Mulliot. That's where we tackle all the big picture topics. But here we'll be covering topics too, with a lot more detail, more breakdown, and bite sized pieces for owners at any stage of ownership or management. I'm your host, Kim Huizinga, COO of Landmark Real Estate Management.
And I'm Haley. I'm the marketing manager also here at Landmark Real Estate Management. We're both located in Bellingham. And this podcast is built for specifically one type of person, the multifamily or single family property owner who maybe wants to run a smarter, more profitable building, but isn't sure where to start or maybe what that even looks like.
Exactly. So, whether you have a duplex, a fourplex, a larger apartment complex, the questions you're dealing with day to day are pretty universal. So, tenants, maintenance, rent, paperwork, it all adds up fast.
And that's why we're here. We're here to break it down one topic at a time. We're going to keep it practical and give owners something they can actually use. So, Kim, let's just start at the very beginning. What does a property manager actually do? Because I think there may be some confusion around that.
There really can be, for sure. At the most fundamental level, a property manager acts as the operator of your investment. You own the asset, we manage it.
So, more than just collecting rent every month.
Way more. So if I was to break it down into four core functions, I would say tenant management, financial management, maintenance coordination, and then you have your legal and compliance. So each one of those has its own area of expertise.
Yeah, so that's a lot. Maybe we should just go through those one by one. So what would you say falls under tenant management?
Great. So tenant management covers the entire life cycle of the tenant. So that's everything from marketing vacant units, screening the applicants, signing the lease, going over the contract with the tenant, handling lease renewals, managing the move in, managing the move out process. It's a lot more involved than what people typically expect, but that's like there's a big life cycle that happens with the tenant.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like probably getting that screening right early on in that life cycle is probably pretty critical, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. A bad placement can cost owners thousands. You have not only just missed rent payments, but property damage comes from bad tenants, legal fees. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about legalities quite a bit here on this podcast and everything that surrounds that. Um, so, doing it right up front is one of the highest leverage things an owner can do, is to place a good quality tenant that's going to take care of your investment and pay rent on time and treat the property as if they owned it.
That's a really big point. And it sounds expensive to be potentially spending extra money in legal fees, getting a lawyer involved. Plus, if your unit's tied up with someone who's not paying rent, then you're losing out on that potential rent from another tenant. And if you're an owner that's spinning your wheels at something that you're not an expert in, and things go sideways, at least you have a property manager who could make it right. And that's part of their job, something they do every day. Um, and just time. I feel like owners spend a lot of time, not just money, but time, fixing problems. Um, would you say that is a big part of handing over your property to a professional manager is giving some of that time back to owners?
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think so many people, when they purchase an investment property, think this is pretty easy, black and white. I'm going to rent out my property. I'm going to collect the rent. I'm going to pay the bills. And it's going to be easy peasy passive income. But when you self manage, you're spending so much of your own time managing the tenants, and so just the communication part alone is a lot to manage. And we as a company have an after hours person on staff, and we're constantly getting phone calls after hours, not just with maintenance emergencies, but even we have lock boxes. So maybe, you
Mm.
know, the code, there's an issue with the code, or they want to extend their time to view the property. Um, you really you're really on call 24/7. And especially when you're dealing with people's homes, people want an instant answer. So if there is a problem or issue, we're big on that customer service and just providing instant response and getting back to people in the format that they've reached out to us. So if people text us, they probably prefer a text back. If they're calling, making sure that we're answering the phone. If they're emailing. So we have our app. So we have a lot of different stages and ways to be contacted, um, thanks to great technology. So it makes it easy for tenants to reach us and vice versa.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, just tenant management alone is a lot of little details, and it's very personal for people. Like you said,
Mhm.
it's their home, it's sensitive. You want to do it right. And landlords want to get it right too. Um, so we haven't even made it through our our list here yet, and that's already seems like a lot we've unpacked. So just to kind of keep moving along here, what about financial management? What does that look like as number two on our list?
Yeah, great question. So it's more than just collecting rent. You're actually tracking the income, the expenses, paying vendors. That can be anything from utility vendors, maintenance vendors. We generate monthly reports so our owners know how their property is performing, and we just provide a really clear picture for them, and try to be as transparent as possible. And same thing goes for the tenant. So being able to provide a tenant ledger that they have access to at any time, copy of their lease. So, being able to provide all that documentation. A lot of self managing owners can struggle because it's easy to lose track of repair spending. Um, and I think a lot of them too also don't realize the cost of a vacancy. There is a daily cost for a vacancy when a property is down. You're losing daily rent, and then you might have marketing expenses, time involved with going to show, take those phone calls. So, all of that is part of the financial management. On top of that, for our larger properties, we also create property budgets. And so, we're doing variance reports on a monthly basis as well.
That's great. I mean, that's a real comprehensive snapshot on what's going on at your property, just books wise. And you brought up repairs, so I think that's a great segue into how, maintenance coordination usually goes. I'm sure it's more than just calling the plumber when something breaks.
Yeah, I think good maintenance coordination means having a network of vetted vendors. Especially, we saw this during COVID when there was
Mm.
just so many vendors that were out of work or no longer available and reliable. So it was just really important. So as a company, we make sure that we vet our vendors, that we make, and what that means for us is competitive pricing, maintaining a full log of the work that's done, that they're proactive, not just reactive. That's also part of our job, obviously, is to be having eyes and ears at the property, um, communication with the tenants, understanding what's going on. So, preventative maintenance is a big part of protecting the asset long term.
Yeah, and that can be hard to stay on top of it, to be proactive, not reactive to things as they come up.
Mhm.
Um, Finally, I feel like kind of the big scary topic for self-managed owners, legal and compliance, making sure you're doing the right things, following laws. How does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we could spend hours on this topic, and I'm sure we'll dive deeper into it in one of our future podcasts. But the amount of laws, federal and state level, that have passed in the last 3 years is like 20 times more than we've had in the last 20 years. So
Wow,
it has
yeah.
become, yeah, a full time job to understand those, stay on top of those, have good legal counsel that's keeping you up to date and walking you through new processes. Um, And then on top of that, where we practice property management today, we have a lot of city regulations and
Mhm.
ordinances. So, fair housing laws are huge, habitability requirements, eviction procedure, lease enforceability. Our CW 5918 is huge. That's our state regulated tenant landlord law. And these things change, and getting any of it wrong can be very expensive. So, having somebody again who is is qualified and a good tenant and stays current is very valuable. Um, we try really hard to keep our owners informed on new legislation and hold quarterly webinars, Troy and I, to talk more depth on these issues. And it's something that we're really passionate about and make sure that, we're reaching out and communicating and advocating for our owners with legislative communities and community members and people that are making these decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that I didn't think of as being also proactive. And you said like advocating for owners, not just always, we have to react to the laws and things that are passed, but um, having someone on your side, to be a voice for your property and investment, I think is really valuable. Yeah, and like you said, we could probably spend a lot of time digging in. I mean, from federal, state to local, that's a lot to track. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that was a great overview of kind of our four big categories. Now, if we were going to picture just like a typical week of a property manager, what do you think that
Oh
typically
my
looks
goodness.
like?
Well, every day is different for sure. But let's just say our property managers come in. The first thing they're going to do is check voicemails, emails, our software, make sure that no maintenance requests came in overnight that weren't emergencies. So that's like the number one way to retain a good tenant is to be proactive and super quick on answering questions, concerns, and especially maintenance because that can be really sensitive. So, let's say a tenant reports an issue. We come in, we triage, we get a vendor dispatch. The tenant gets a response ideally within 24 hours.
And that's all happening, while your other stuff day to day is still running in the background,
Yes.
always.
Yes. So you can have maybe, units turning over. So, we're proactively looking at those, like what tenants are moving out, scheduling move out inspections. We got to return the security deposits within a legal time frame, getting the unit cleaned, prepped, getting it listed. And then of course the financial side runs continuously. Rent's due on the first, late notices go out on the sixth, owner statements go out mid-month. So there's for sure a calendar of kind of deadlines that happens on a monthly basis. There's seasonality, highs and lows of our business as well. So I would say it's somewhat routine. A lot of times we get a phone call and maybe, it's a weird situation, but it's like, "Oh yeah, we've dealt with that before." There's just a lot happening.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, like you said, there is some sort of rhythm, sort of routine, day to day, week to week. Where do you think, your expertise might come up when something really unexpected, comes in? Um, maybe a tenant dispute or an inspection you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I feel like this has been kinda the theme of the day, but the best property managers are proactive, not reactive. So, we've done an excellent job, in my opinion, of creating systems that prevent problems. But when surprises come, having a process means you're not scrambling, um, and having systems in place just makes it something that's easy to go through for the employees and the property owners and the tenants.
Lots of systems.
Yeah.
um, Well, great. I think, if we could wrap up that section for an owner listening, what do you think is the main takeaway for today?
What I would say is property management isn't necessarily a cost, it's a function of owning real estate investment. So in my opinion, every building needs it, whether you're doing it yourself or you're paying someone to do it. The question is whether you're equipped to handle all four areas that we covered today at the level that they need to be handled. And you're comfortable when something goes wrong and you have the resources available to you and the connections, whether that's through the vendors, the legal, compliance, all of that.
Yeah. And I'm guessing owners probably start out fine. Things are going well. They just got this great investment property. Um, but maybe it just grows beyond what they signed up for. And pretty soon they're the ones that are in the weeds, responding to tenants and coordinating maintenance. And they're not really enjoying their passive income the way they imagined. They wanted to be able to go on vacation and not answer that late night phone call. And sounds like that's what you guys do all day long.
Yeah, I see that a lot, especially with newer properties and there's less maintenance and repairs to tackle. It might seem smooth sailing for a while, but then you start to see deferred maintenance. You start to get complacent with your rents. You start to like develop relationships with your tenants, or you just want to get them off your back, so you let them pay rent late, or you don't increase their rent. Um, so then the building starts underperforming, even though the asset itself is solid. So a really good management team brings consistency and processes that run reliably every single month.
That's great. Yeah. And I think just to reiterate what you said earlier that it's a function. It's not necessarily or should be not necessarily framed as an expense. It's a function of owning property. I think that's a really great
Yeah.
thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Um, so that was, yeah, really great, helpful framework. Thanks, Kim, for joining us here and going through all these areas, giving our owners some tools and insight on what property managers actually do.
Yeah.
So I'm Haley, wrapping up here.
And I'm Kim, and we'll see you next time on In the Weeds podcast.